Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. I'm back in the studio for this week's show, away from any hotel construction noise. I'm glad that so many people were amused at my frustration, let's say, last week. And we've got a lot to cover this week, including the opening of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which posted one of the best openings ever for a movie based on a video game. Real quick before I jump into that, though, I just want to say thank you to everybody who sent me stuff on Instagram, who's left a comment here on YouTube about their YouTube recap. A lot of people saying that my channel was in their top 5, or for some people, even their number 1 most watched channel for the year. I really appreciate that. I always say this, especially when somebody comes up and maybe introduces themselves, that it's great to know that there are people out there that are actually watching. Not that I don't know that, but it's nice to just hear from those people directly. So thank you to everybody who sent those notifications. It's a nice little boost at the end of the year. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to share that with me. So let's jump into the box office results for this past weekend at the domestic box office. And the great thing about December so far is that even though November was really a big letdown at the box office, December has come out of the gate really strong, because Five Nights at Freddy's was one of those movies where the numbers just kept going up all weekend, and the final number was actually higher than the estimate. It came in at just over $64 million to take that number 1 spot. So once again, the strength of that film, particularly among young moviegoers, really helping to push it over the top. Zootopia 2 had a 56.7% drop in weekend number 2 for a $43.4 million weekend. It's now at $220.9 million. That's not a bad drop, especially considering that it was a big holiday weekend before that. However, Wicked for Good has not been holding well. On last week's show, we talked about the fact that it dropped way more than the other movies over Thanksgiving weekend in the top 10, and it dropped 71.9% in weekend number 3. So what's become very obvious is that this movie does not have the legs that the original Wicked film had. And I think a lot of that criticism about Act 2 / the second movie being weaker is really kind of being borne out at the box office. Not that it's a flop. It's not. It's at almost $300 million domestically, but it's very heavily front-loaded, which is not what we saw with the first movie. Jujutsu Kaisen Execution opens in 4th place at just over $10 million. That's a compilation film of the last season, and I believe it had some of the episodes from the new season in it. Now You See Me, Now You Don't comes in 5th place at $3.48 million. It's now at $55.3 million domestic. In 6th place was the recut Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. Despite being pretty much 5 hours long once you add in trailers, it still brought in $3.4 million. Eternity drops 14.2% in its second weekend. It had an expansion in theater count. That's why that drop is so low. $2.7 million. It's now at $9.5 million. Hamnet also had a big expansion. Its business was up 148% for $2.3 million on the weekend. It's now at $4.1 million. The nominations are starting to come in. Hamnet is in the mix in a lot of those nominations, so I think that the curiosity around this film is accelerating. Durandar comes in 9th place at $1.98 million. This is a Hindi language film from India. It's a historical action film. In 10th place is Predator Badlands at $1.8 million. Its domestic total at $88.2 million. It doesn't look like it's going to get to $100 million, but still hanging around the top 10. Dropping out of the top 10 this week, we have The Running Man, which is out after 3 weeks. Sisu Road to Revenge is out after 2 weeks. Rental Family, which I feel like maybe should have had a longer run in the top 10, maybe it'll pop back up there, is out after 1 week. And Wake Up Dead Man did not report any grosses, official or unofficial, so I have no choice but to put it out of the top 10. My guess is, though, that it probably wasn't in the top 10 anyway, because Netflix not committed to theatrical releases. Good to know for a company that's looking to buy a major studio. All right, looking at the biggest theater count changes for this past weekend, Sisu Road to Revenge pretty much lost almost all of its theaters, 1,811 of them. It's still in 411. The Running Man lost about half of its theaters, 1,200 of them. It's now in 1,549. Eternity, as I mentioned, had a big theater count expansion. It added 1,038 theaters. It's now in 2,386. Rental Family lost 920 theaters. It's now in just over 1,000. And Predator Badlands lost 670 170 theaters, it's still in just over 2,000. Looking at what I call our road to recovery, the blue line is the box office weekend average for 2015 to 2019. The red line is the average for 2021 to 2024, and the dotted black line is every weekend this year. And you can see when we talk about December, last weekend was very healthily above the average, both pre and post-pandemic, but that's because Thanksgiving fell in a little bit of a weird spot. But look at where we fell this weekend. Way above not only where we have been, but where we generally are. This time of December is usually where we see a dip in the box office more than any other time of the month because people are done with Thanksgiving, they're getting ready for Christmas, they're not necessarily going to the movies, but Five Nights at Freddy's 2 got people out there, and if we can sustain this momentum, then we could really have a chance of closing out the box office season strong at what has been a very up and down year. So let's talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and some of the other movies that are in the top 10. First of all, when we look at horror opening weekends for 2025, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 put up the second best opening for any horror film, only behind The Conjuring Last Rites, which came in at 84 million. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 comes in at 64 million. That's ahead of Final Destination, Bloodlines, Sinners, and Weapons, which are the other top 5 films there. And looking at the top 2025 horror grosses, Five Nights at Freddy's is already at number 7, so it's ahead of The Monkey, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Hard Eyes. It is just behind 28 Years Later, also behind Black Phone 2. Then we have Final Destination Bloodlines, Weapons, The Conjuring Last Rites, and Sinners. Now, if you remember, the first Five Nights at Freddy's had a very steep drop-off from weekend number 1 to weekend number 2 at the box office. That movie, though, was a day-and-date streaming release. It was available in theaters and on Peacock the same day. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is not. So when we look at the box office for next weekend, it'll be interesting to see if it follows the same pattern as the first film, or if maybe that second weekend is a little better because it is not also available on streaming. Looking at the top video game movie openings, a Minecraft movie still holds the number 1 spot from earlier this year at 162.7 million. Then we have the Super Mario Brothers movie in second place. Even though that movie opened on Wednesday, it still made 146.3 million. In third place is Five Nights at Freddy's, the first movie, which opened to $80 million. That's impressive, made even more impressive by the fact, as I mentioned, that it was also available on streaming. There's just a lot of enthusiasm around this franchise with its fan base. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is in fourth place. And then Five Nights at Freddy's 2 rounds out the top 5 at $64 million. That puts it in just ahead of last year's Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which came in at that weird pre-Christmas window. It did very well after it was released. Sonic the Hedgehog comes in 7th place, followed by Pokemon Detective Pikachu, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, and Uncharted. So I mentioned Wicked and the fact that it is tailing off much quicker than the first movie, and this is a really good sort of visualization of that. This is the cumulative daily box office for Wicked for Good versus the original Wicked. Wicked is in green, Wicked for Good is in pink, and you can see that Wicked for Good really got off to a hotter start than the first movie and was basically ahead of it on cumulative gross until we hit about day 12, which was leading into this weekend. And you can see now that Wicked is pulling ahead. So through 17 days, Wicked has now outgrossed Wicked for Good on a day-to-day basis. And I don't see any reason why this pattern won't continue. So that's really the pattern we're seeing between Wicked and Wicked for Good. The first movie had a slower start. People were slower to get to theaters to see it. But Wicked for Good, which popped bigger out of the gate, is having more trouble bringing people into theaters as time goes on. I also mentioned that Jujutsu Kaisen was in the top 5. It actually had the 10th best opening weekend for an animated film this year, just behind Smurfs, which is at number 9. And when you look at this chart, 3 of the 10 biggest openings for animated films this year are tied to ongoing anime series. Jujutsu Kaisen at number 10, Chainsaw Man the movie at number 8, and then of course Demon Slayer Infinity Castle at number 2. So anime big on streaming and television, but also doing well for theaters as fans are showing up to see these tie-in projects alongside the more established US studio productions. Let's take a look now at box office around the world, and we'll start with the international box office. This is all movies released outside of the US and Canada. And at number 1 was Zootopia 2, which made another $219 million just internationally, not counting domestic box office. That's a 45.3% drop-off from its opening weekend. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 doing pretty well around the world. It made $46.1 million internationally. In third place is Gezi Town at $22.9 million. This is a film from China about a small town thrown into chaos. At number 14 was Durandar, which brought in $14.2 million. And then Wicked for Good has a 54.5% drop off internationally, so a little less steep than what we saw domestically. It made another $13.4 million. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get the top 5 films worldwide. And at number 1, of course, no surprise, was Zootopia 2 with a 47.6% overall drop-off. It made $262.4 million this past weekend. Most movies would be happy with that as an opening weekend. It's now at $917.9 million, so it's going to cross the $1 billion mark in about 2 weeks. It's an incredibly successful movie. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 posts a $110.1 million opening weekend worldwide. That's very strong, especially given the budget point of that movie. Wicked for Good made another $30.7 million. It's now at $440 million worldwide. Gezi Town comes in at number 4, and Durandar comes in at number 5 with a $16.1 million worldwide opening weekend. And I mentioned that Zootopia 2 is soon going to cross the $1 billion mark. That brings us to this week's trivia question. How many other Disney animation films, not including Pixar, the Disney animation studio films, have made $1 billion worldwide, and can you name them? This might be easy for some people, but some of these questions are harder. Some of these questions are easier. I'll give you a second to think about it. Pause the video if you want some more time, because here comes the answer. It's 4. Frozen 2, Frozen, Moana 2, and Zootopia. So soon there will be 5 Disney animation films in the $1 billion club worldwide. The original Lion King is very close to breaking into that club, by the way. But right now we're going to have 3 sequels and then 2 of the movies that spawn those sequels making up those 5 movies. Let's take a deeper dive into the weekend box office domestically, and we'll start with the top per theater averages for the past weekend. At number 1 is Rosemead, which played in just one theater but brought in $50,243. Lucy Liu has gotten a lot of acclaim in this movie for her performance as a terminally ill woman struggling with her son's mental illness. It won the top prize right here in Northwest Arkansas at the Bentonville Film Festival for narrative film. So Rosemead at number 1, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 coming in second place at $18,760 per theater in each of its over 3,400 theaters. The Secret Agent expanded to 8 theaters and brought in $13,484 per theater. I just had a chance to watch this one, and I have to say you may very well hear me talking about this movie more as I get into my favorite films of the year, because I really enjoyed it. At number 4 is La Grazia, playing in one theater, which brought in $12,820 in that theater. It's an Italian film about an outgoing president's last days in office. This is from director Paolo Sorrentino, and it won Best Actor at the Venice Film Festival, so we'll see if that expands in the weeks to come. And in 5th place is Zootopia 2, which brought in $25,000 per theater on average in each of its 4,000 theaters. And when we talk about Rosemead, it actually had the 4th best per theater average of the year at $50,243. That comes in just ahead of Sentimental Values' debut in 4 theaters back in November. It comes in behind Friendship's debut in 6 theaters back in May, the debut of The Encampments in 1 theater in March, and then the reigning champion as of now, The Phoenician Scheme, which brought in $93,000 per theater back in May, playing in 6 theaters. These were the top films in limited release this past weekend, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer. At number 1 is Hamnet, playing in 744 theaters. That brought in $2.3 million. Durandar was in 391 theaters and brought in $1.98 million. Then we have Sentimental Value, which is in 334 theaters. It brought in $300,000. 100 Nights of Hero comes in 4th place. It was in 828 theaters and brought in $250,000. This is a period drama starring Emma Corrin and Nicholas Galitzine. And at number 5 was the Met Opera, The Magic Flute Holiday Encore. It was in an unknown number of theaters, but brought in $197,000. Well, November is over and we are now into December. Last week, with everything else that was going on, I did not do the catch-up as far as the market share and the cumulative box office year to date, so we're going to do that right now. But looking back on the month of November, last week for the member poll question, I asked you what your favorite movie released on streaming or theatrically in November was, and we had a lot of different answers. The winner was Frankenstein, which had 21 votes. Right behind Frankenstein was Predator Badlands with 20 votes. Then we had Wake Up Dead Man, which was in a select number of theaters in November with 16 votes. Wicked for Good in fourth place with 14 votes. And then Rental Family, I mentioned. I thought this movie maybe could have had a longer run in the top 10. It makes the top 5 as far as audience members' favorites in theaters. It came in with 12 votes. So what is the box office looking like through November compared to last year and the past 10 years? Well, first of all, cumulatively through the end of November, the 2025 box office is up $105.8 million from 2024. We're that far ahead of the pace from last year, but that is almost cut in half from where we were in October. We were plus $208.7 million in October, and that's largely because the November box office this year versus last year was down about $100 million, but you can see on the chart we're at $7.69 million through the end of November versus $7.584 million through the end of November in 2024. But all those hopes of hitting $10 billion this year, yeah, that ain't going to happen. As you can see, in 2023, we were at $8.159 billion through the end of November. So this is going to be another down year from 2023, it would seem, unless we have a major surprise. Then, of course, we have the step up every year from 2021 to 2022, but, down 25% or more from where we were back in 2019, 2018, and really all of those years preceding the pandemic. And flashing back to a member poll from a few weeks ago as we entered November, everyone was so optimistic. I asked if people thought that November's box office would match last year's, and 58% said yes. Domestically, they believed that it would, but it in fact did not. There was reason for optimism, but it just didn't pan out, as has been the case for so many months this year. Let's look at the theatrical market share. This is all tickets sold since January 1st, and because this is delayed a bit, this is through December 7th. So as we get into the release of Avatar and the holiday weekend, 2025 box office year to date with this past weekend included is at $7.886 billion. And when we look at the market share change since the end of October, Disney's picked up about 1% market share. That's largely due to Zootopia being released. Warner Brothers is actually the biggest loser as far as market share. It's lost 3.2% since the end of October, and it's lost the overall lead. Disney has the overall lead for 2025. Warner Brothers now has 23.6% share. Universal picked up about 2.9% market share. Wicked for Good has a lot to do with that, with 21.1% share overall for the year. Paramount stayed about steady at 6.4%. Sony lost about half a percentage point. It's got 7.3% of the 2025 theatrical share. Lionsgate gained about half a percentage point. It's at 3.4%. Amazon stayed flat. I think it's just over 1%. And all other studios account for 10% of tickets sold this year. And the next check-in we're going to do is at the end of the year, once all the holiday movies have come out. But it looks like Disney has the inside track on once again being the leading studio as far as ticket sales in 2025. And our Charts with Dan member poll question concerns the holiday season, and it's similar to the one that I asked about November. Will the 2025 domestic box office total be lower than 2024's? There was hope that it would be higher, but are we actually going to come in lower? Now, 2025 is currently $105.8 million ahead of 2024. The December 2024 box office total was $986.3 million. And the box office to date in December 25 is $195.4 million. So we need to do a shade less than, $800 million through the rest of the month in order to match December 2024. We'd need to do about $700 million through the rest of the month in order to make sure that 2025 matches 2024's total. Do you think that's going to happen? You can vote right now, and the results will be revealed on next week's show. Let's look at some of our annual charts. First of all, we have the 2025 fall holiday box office chart. This is all movies released post Labor Day. Wicked for Good right now is still at number 1 at $297.5 million, but Zootopia 2 is climbing this chart quickly. It's now number 2 at $220.9 million. The Conjuring Last Rites moves down one spot to number 3. Demon Slayer, Infinity Castle, and Predator Badlands round out the top 5, followed by Black Phone 2, Tron Ares, One Battle After Another. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 enters the chart at number 9. Now You See Me, Now You Don't moves down one spot to number 10, and Regretting You is off of this particular chart. Looking at the 2025 annual domestic box office chart, Wicked for Good is now a top 5 movie. It has bumped down Sinners and The Fantastic Four: First Steps. The top 4 remain the same: a Minecraft movie, Lilo and Stitch, Superman, and Jurassic World Rebirth. How to Train Your Dragons at number 8. Zootopia 2 hits the charts at number 9 at $220.9 million and looking to climb quickly. Captain America: Brave New World drops down 1 spot to number 10. And Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, now not one of the top 10 grossers domestically at the box office in 2025. I don't know if a lot of people would have called that happening. And looking at the 2025 worldwide box office, this is where Zootopia 2 has really made its move. It's up 6 spots from last week at $917.9 million and will soon become the second Hollywood film this year to crack $1 billion. And it looks like, unless it really gets stopped in its tracks, and it's not going to happen, it's going to pass Lilo and Stitch for that number 2 spot. Jurassic World Rebirth moves down 1 spot to number 5. Demon Slayer Infinity Castles down 1 spot to number 6. How to Train Your Dragon, F1 the Movie, Superman, and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning all down 1 spot as well. So that's what's going on at the box office. Let's take a look now at the world of streaming, and we have our own blockbuster numbers to report for the first few days of streaming for Stranger Things Season 5. Those are the numbers we're looking at today. We'll see what Week 2 looked like when Netflix releases their latest batch of numbers this afternoon. This covers November 24th through November 30th, and you can see that Stranger Things Season 5 debuted to 59.63 million views. It got a little bit of a jump because it debuted earlier than some Netflix programming on the night before Thanksgiving, but still, that is an impressive total. In second place is the Netflix original movie Jingle Bell Heist. Christmas movies always do well on Netflix. It brought in 19.31 million views. Then we have Champagne Problems at number 3. K-Pop Demon Hunters jumps back into the top 5. It's at 10.38 million views. In Your Dreams is at number 5. The newest Kevin Hart comedy special debuts at number 6 with 9.23 million views. Stranger Things Season 1 actually was a top 10 show this past week at 8.95 million views. That shows just how interested people were that the first season was back into the top 10 as well. The Beast in Me is at number 8, Frankenstein's at number 9, and Train Dreams, another movie you might hear me talking about more as we get to the end of the year, is at number 10 with 6.92 million views. As far as view totals for Netflix series this year, Stranger Things Season 5 put up the second best total that we've seen. It's 59.63 million views for its first week, is only behind, and really just behind, what we saw for the first week of Squid Game Season 3 back in June, which brought in 60.07 million views. And we'll see how those two compare as Stranger Things 5 continues its season. Because remember, Squid Game Season 3, that was a whole season. This is just the first chunk of Season 5 for Stranger Things. So it's got a lot more numbers to put up. The second week of Squid Game Season 2, as we headed into the new year, comes in third at 58.12 million views. Then we have Wednesday Season 2's debut at 49.99 million views. And the second week of Squid Game Season 3 at 46.27 million views. Looking at the top Netflix weekly views as far as all programming, really the top 4 are the same: Squid Game Season 3, Stranger Things Season 5, Squid Game Season 2, Wednesday Season 2, and then we have the second week of Straw, which had huge viewership back in June at 48.89 million views. When we look at the most watched shows on Netflix in 2025, Stranger Things Season 5 is already at number 8, bumping Missing You down to number 9 and Sirens down to number 10. That drops American Murder Gabby Petito off the list for the overall top 10. And we will see if Stranger Things Season 5 can make a late bid to upend Adolescence. The one thing that might work against it is that the finale debuts on New Year's Eve. So some of those views are going to be split into 2026 when we look at the yearly chart. But it could just be that Stranger Things Season 5 has enough viewership momentum to already take it to number 1. Of course, I'll be tracking that in the weeks to come. Looking at the most watched 2025 Netflix movies, Frankenstein moves up to number 8 with 84.76 million views. That bumps The Secret Life of Pets 2 down to number 9. Of course, we'll finalize this chart once Netflix releases all of its viewership data at the end of 2025. This is just based on what we know for the first half of the year and then the weekly reports for the last 6 months. K-Pop Demon Hunters, the number 1 movie of the year with with nearly 500 million views. It's got 300 million views on number 2. So yeah, I'd say it's pretty safe that that's going to be number 1 at the end of the year. Let's take a look now at the Nielsen numbers. Now, these are domestic numbers only, not global like the Netflix numbers are, and they're delayed by about a month because that's how long it takes Nielsen to give them to us. So this covers the week of November 3rd through the 9th. And when we look at the most watched streaming movies, Frankenstein debuted at number 1 here in the US, according to Nielsen, with 20.96 million hours watched. K-pop Demon Hunter sticking around there in second place at 9.8 million hours watched. In third place was the debut of The Fantastic Four: First Steps on Disney Plus, which brought in 9.43 million hours. Then we have Jurassic World Rebirth and A House of Dynamite. How the Grinch Stole Christmas hits the list at number 6 in early November. So once those jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins and costumes were put away, a bunch of people were ready to just jump into Christmas. Life of the Party is at number 7 with 3.85 million views. Then we have Eileen, Queen of the Serial Killers. Just Mercy is at number 9, and Tyler Perry's Finding Joy on Amazon Prime Video is at number 10. And when we look at the top streaming debuts here in the US, according to Nielsen, Frankenstein comes in 5th place, behind the debut of The Accountant 2, Back in Action, Moana 2, and then The Champion, Happy Gilmore, which had a just absolutely massive opening weekend on streaming back in July. These were the most watched streaming shows for November 3rd through the 9th. The Witcher is at number 1 at 15.75 million hours watched, but right behind it in second place was Stranger Things. And keep in mind, this is from early November, so this is nearly a month before the new season was released. A lot of people already in early November were rewatching the show, so we should see Stranger Things on this chart for the next few weeks leading up to the premiere. Grey's Anatomy comes in 3rd, followed by NCIS and Bluey. Bob's Burgers and Law & Order at numbers 6 and 7. The Great British Baking Show hits the charts again at number 8. I believe this is around the time it wrapped out its most recent season. The Big Bang Theory returns to the chart at number 9, and The Diplomat rounds out the top 10. Looking at the top 20 streaming shows as far as watch time per episode, so you take the total number of watch hours and divide it by the number of episodes available to watch, the Netflix historical limited series Death by Lightning comes in first place at 1.63 million hours per episode. Then we have the series All Her Fault at number 2 with 941,000 hours per episode. Ms. Rachel comes in third place, followed by The Witcher and Stranger Things, rounding out the top 5. Squid Game The Challenge hits at number 6 with 440,000 hours per episode. Nobody Wants This is at number 7. The Diplomat's at number 8. Tulsa King is at number 9. And Poldark is at number 10. And that's everything I've got for you numbers-wise on the show this week. Before we go, I just wanted to point out some things that you might be interested in both on streaming and in theaters this upcoming week. First of all, today, I believe probably right now, if you missed Roofman in theaters, it is now available on Paramount+. Tomorrow on Disney Plus is the Season 2 premiere of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This will be a 2-episode premiere, so you can catch that starting tomorrow. Then on Friday, it's a relatively slow week for new releases as theaters get ready for Avatar. Ella McKay is the biggest new release. It'll be hitting theaters nationwide. It is written and directed by James L. Brooks. It's his first movie in 15 years. Emma Mackey plays a young governor who rises to power and struggles with that transition. Also hitting theaters nationwide is the, oh God, I can't believe this, 25th anniversary re-release of Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. We know that this is a popular movie on streaming. We'll see how many people show up to theaters to see it. I think a lot of people my age who saw it when they were kids are going to be bringing their kids to this movie. The Shining is hitting some IMAX theaters. It's only in select locations this upcoming weekend. It is not playing near me, per usual, but I'm very jealous for people that are going to get a chance to see it in IMAX. So check your local listings if you want to check that movie out. In limited release, we have a new take on the 1984 Christmas horror film Silent Night, Deadly Night hitting theaters. Also in limited release, the newest film from Gus Van Sant. It's called Dead Man's Wire, and it's based on a true story about a man who takes a mortgage officer hostage. It stars Bill Skarsgård, Dacre Montgomery, and Al Pacino. In limited release, we have Atropia releasing this weekend. This movie won the Sundance Grand Jury Prize, and having seen it and the other competitors, I'm actually kind of shocked that this is the winner because it came in ahead of movies like Sorry Baby and Twinless that I think have gone on to garner much more acclaim. I didn't love it. I thought it was okay, but it's finally hitting theaters this upcoming weekend. Also in limited release, we have Resurrection, which we talked about on the show a couple weeks ago. This is a sci-fi epic from Chinese director Bi Gan. Hitting Netflix this weekend, they should have some more blockbuster numbers because Wake Up Dead Man will make its streaming debut after a very small theatrical run. So if you didn't catch it in theaters, you can catch it this upcoming week on Netflix, and you can catch my review of the movie, which is already here on the channel. It's a big Taylor Swift weekend on Disney+. First of all, they're debuting the first 2 episodes of their 6-episode show, Taylor Swift: The Eras Tour, The End of an Era. And they're all in the Taylor Swift business because also debuting on Friday on Disney Plus is Taylor Swift: The Eras Tour, The Final Show, which is a recording of the last show of that tour. So the Eras Tour may be over, but the cash train is still rolling. And then a couple movies available to watch on various streaming services. F1 will make its streaming debut. I like the fact that Apple TV let it sit in theaters for so long. So if you didn't see F1 in theaters, you can see it on Apple TV this upcoming weekend. And Spinal Tap 2, The End Continues, which very few people saw in theaters, will make its debut on HBO Max. And that's what I've got for you this week. Be sure to stay tuned, though, right here to the channel. We're going to have our first live show in a couple weeks, tomorrow afternoon, just because of my schedule and being on the road and the holiday, etc. So we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. There's a lot of news. My reaction to the Golden Globe nominations was actually bumped from yesterday morning because of everything going on with Paramount and Netflix and Warner Brothers. So I'm going to talk about those nominations. I'm going to get into Quentin Tarantino deciding to insult like every actor in Hollywood, and of course take your questions. So look for my live show tomorrow afternoon. And then the last week has really shown who knows what kind of news is going to break based off of all these acquisitions and everything else that's going on, as well as trying to catch some new movies. I may do a spoiler review for Wake Up Dead Man. There's a lot of stuff that you might see popping up here on the channel. So if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you know when I upload a new video. If you liked this video, tell your friends, because I'm always looking to grow and reach a new audience. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.